In today's video, we're going to recreate this 3D viral Instagram reel from Kold. The great thing is when copying this reel from Kold, it's going to give you a solid foundation to be able to do this 3D stylized effect where you can take this to any project that you're going to work on in the future. So after this tutorial, if you want to learn how to do more of this and even the Ali Abdaal style, Iman Ghazi style, Danko style, Vox style, and the style that I do myself that has gotten me over millions of views on Instagram, then join our Leverage Editor program and community. As of right now, we're running a discount for 5 days. And after the 5 days, we're going to increase the price and the spots will be super limited within the community. As we want to control the flow of the people that come in so that the people who are in the community have that individual attention they need to be able to go from an average or okay editor that struggles to land clients, have high quality work, and get paid what you deserve to becoming an advanced level editor and animator who's able to work with top level brands and influencers while getting paid top dollar. And the program is the collection of all my knowledge of the past 12 years and shows you how I was landing clients to where I was making over $30,000 a month as an editor and animator. So the program shows you all that, but we also have the community that goes along with it. In this community, you're going to get access to challenges where you can win cash prizes, weekly calls, one-on-one mentorship, job boards, and much, much more. So click the link in the description, become a leveraged editor, and make a living working anywhere in the world as an editor and animator. Spots are going to be limited, and the discount is happening for only 5 days. So join right now. Click the link in the description. With that, let's get into the video. Alrighty, so we're here in After Effects, and first off, I can't really speak that well because I had some surgery. So if it sounds like I'm a little bit weird or whatever, I had surgery and yeah, it's a little hard for me to speak. But that being said, we're going to get this tutorial done. No days off. We're going to get you to be able to edit these 3D viral reels just like Kold. And shout out to him for this video that we're copying here. And also, fair warning, the video is not going to look that great until the very end. It's all about setting it up and then adding those finishing touches on the end that really make it pop. So as we go about this and you're like, oh, not really looking that good, this looks like terrible, just wait till the very end because that's when we start adding effects to it that make it look really good. Also, if you want all the assets to this project, that's only available for our program and community members. So make sure you join that to get all the assets here. If you don't want to join it, totally fine. You can find all these assets on Google. They're all for free. But if you really want them, there's a couple in there that are a little hard to find. Join the community and you'll get the project file and all the assets plus all the other project files that I create for tutorials. So join that community. And now let's get into it. So we want our composition here. And for the composition, you just want to copy this. So 1080 by 1920, frame rate 60 is fine. And then the duration, we want to put that at 15 seconds here. This is because we're going to be working with a pretty long timeline. So keep it at 15 seconds. We just want plenty of room to play around with. Okay, so now that we have that, it's time to get into the scene setup. So before we start animating everything, I always like to set up the scene first. We're going to set up all 4 scenes and then we're going to do animating and then we're going to add the finishing touches to it. Okay, so for the first scene, it's the sky with some text on it. So that's pretty easy. I'm going to go and find that sky here. So we can just drag and drop this sky video on here. Once again, you can find this on Google or if you want to get it easier, or you can join our program to get all this stuff here. So we got our sky. I'm going to just scale this up for now, just like that. And I'm going to hit T on my keyboard to turn down the opacity right around like 20, maybe even a little less. We'll go 25% and that should be pretty good. Next thing that we want to do is add some clouds. So I have some cloud assets that I found. So we're just going to drag and drop these on, scale them down. So hitting S on my keyboard, scaling that down, placing it over here. We could also turn down the opacity and then we can just duplicate this cloud. So Command D to duplicate, bring it to the left here, Command D one more time, flip it horizontally if needed. So I'm just going to click this right here and just flip it like that. It's just a quick, easy way to flip things. Just adjust it. This is not going to matter too much until the end, like where the placement of everything is at. As you'll see when we get into the 3D scene, we're going to have to adjust the positioning of things a lot. But now we're going to do the text. So go to your text tool, I'm going to click once here and just type in truth. So the font that I'm using here is, I'm actually going to change this to Europa. Now to get this font, you can be in our program and community, but you might be able to find it for free. So just look that up. If not, just use like Babes New and you should be fine. So I'm going to change this one to black. First off, I want to scale it down and then we're going to create a little rectangle behind it. So go to your rectangle tool. Make sure you're not clicked on anything in the timeline so you can create that shape. I'm going to drag this below our text layer here, hit V on the keyboard. I'm just going to adjust it a little bit here. And we're going to obviously change this to a yellow. So around that color is pretty good. Then we need to do the other text. So I'm just going to hit Command D on the truth text, click and hold Shift and drag that to the right. Holding Shift just keeps it in that horizontal plane. And then we're going to change this to is, change the fill to white, bring this to the left. That should be good. And then I'm going to duplicate the truth one again. So Command D, bring it down while holding Shift, type in social media. So also should be all caps here as well. Actually, I just want to type social here because I forgot that we're going to have to animate social media coming up separately. So we want to change this fill to like a reddish orange here. Not too red and not too orange. So like a little in betweener here. That should be good right there. I'm going to duplicate this by hitting Command D. Click and drag while holding Shift and bring it to the right. And then we're going to do media. Get the spacing in between here, right? So one thing, we need to scale truth and is up by quite a bit. So I'm just going to scale that up because we want it to be like almost the same size here. Scale that up. And then we'll take this, make it bigger. Okay, that's pretty good. And then we need to make another container here for social media. So I'm going to go up to my rectangle tool, click and drag just like that. And then we're just going to change the fill to black and then obviously bring this below social media and then just adjust these a little bit. And that looks pretty good. One thing that we can do is pre-compose this. This is going to help us out a little later. So I'm just going to type truth text, hit OK, and we should be good. All right, so that's our first scene here. It's pretty simple. Of course, it's not looking like the end result. Just wait till the end. I promise you it's going to look really nice at the end. We just need to build out the basic scenes first, then add the animation, and then all the finishing touches on at the end. So just wait for a little bit and it's going to look good. So we want to make this around, let's just do like 3 seconds here. Highlight everything and then hit Command-Shift-D on a Mac. That's just going to create a cut. I'm going to delete everything after that. Okay. So now we want to work on that second scene. All right. So the second scene is pretty simple. We're going to drag this guy here. Once again, you can get this asset in our program community. It's out now. The discount's only going to be available for 5 days. So make sure to join. You'll be able to get this within the community. So we're going to need to manipulate it a little bit. We're going to throw a effect on it. So go to your effect and presets. We're going to type in tone and we're going to do CC toner and toss that on the guy. So for the highlights here, we want to change that from white to like a little bit of a off-white type blue thing. So type this color code in here and hit OK. For the midtones, we're going to change this to a dark blue. Type this color code in and then hit OK. And then for the shadows, we just want to keep it as black here and we should be good. Next is adjusting this, so I'm going to scale it up. We kind of want his feet a little bit out of the picture and his phone in there. Now we can implement the text here, so I'm going to go to my text tool. I'm going to type up here. We want caps too, so is gonna. We need to change this font to a really skinny font. So I'm using Pasto Pro. You should be able to have this if you have After Effects, I think, or if you should have this font. It comes with After Effects, I think. I'm going to just scale that up right about here. I'm going to hit Command D to duplicate the text, click and drag while holding Shift. And I'm going to type in Become. So for this, we actually want to change the font to Bebas New Regular. You can find this for free, or once again, this will be available for you to download in the community. I'm going to scale that up so it's matching the same width size as is gonna. I'm going to move this guy. We want his face like just a little bit over that. Kind of creates this cool 3D effect. So that looks good. And then we're going to add the Instagram logo. So you can find this online. Once again, this will be available for all community members. Tossing this Instagram logo on here. I'm going to scale it up a little bit. So right about there, we're going to put this behind everything. And then I'm going to hit T on my keyboard to bring up the opacity settings and just turn that opacity down a little bit, not too much. That's pretty good. And then we're going to duplicate this. So I'm going to hit Command D to duplicate. I'm going to drag this to the bottom right here. I actually want to put this in front because it's kind of going to overlay him a little bit, but I also want to flip it. So I'm going to click this thing on the right, this little box here. I'm just going to do this. It's a quick way to flip it, but you also want to, when you do it, you want to make sure it still looks quite normal. I'm going to scale this one up a little bit because this is going to be in our foreground. So obviously things in the foreground, meaning closer to the camera, it's going to be bigger. One effect that we can toss onto this is a Gaussian blur because it's also going to be out of focus. That's the word, out of focus. It's going to be out of focus because it's in the foreground and the person is going to be in focus. So we need to add a blur to it. So I'm going to toss this Gaussian blur onto it and just beef this up a little bit. Something like that should be good. We're going to need to throw glow effects on all this stuff, but that's going to come later on because usually when you do a glow effect, it really slows down your computer. So you want to do that stuff right before you export. That's why like this frame is not looking totally, how it should be just yet. That being said though, I do want to throw on this ellipse here. So I'm going to go to my ellipse tool, make a little circle, change the fill to blue color, like that should be fine. I'm going to add another Gaussian blur to it. beef that up a little bit, and then we're going to add a glow to it. So I just said don't throw glow effects on, but just so we don't forget, because this one's an easy one to forget, we're going to add a glow. So you could do the regular After Effects glow effect onto it, and you can get the desired look that we're going for, but I'm going to use deep glow. It just makes it a lot easier and a lot quicker to get the desired glow effect that we like. Deep glow, I think it's like $40. If you have the money for it, I definitely recommend it. Of course, you don't have to buy it. So yeah, just we're going to do deep glow here, and we're just going to do the radius quite a bit. Turn that up a lot. That should be good. Those settings should be good. I'm going to change the fill to more of a whitish blue, like that. Then we're going to throw this behind the guy, and we want to put it behind the phone here. I'm going to scale it down. Scale that down, and then we're going to mess with the radius and beef that up as well as the exposure, just like that. That's good. So what we want to do here is make sure our playhead is right after this first scene. So everything right here is our first scene. This is our second scene that we just made. So we're going to highlight all the layers within our second scene and hit Command-Shift-D. That's going to split everything. We're just going to delete everything here to the left. So we can just delete all this stuff here. And that's our second scene. So we have our first scene, second scene. We're going to go about another 3 seconds here, so around to 6 seconds, and we're going to make our third scene. So Command-Shift-D, that's going to delete everything to the right. So Command-Shift-D, that's going to create a split, and then we're going to hit delete to delete everything to the right. So we got our first, second, and now it's time for the third scene. This scene, right, the third scene that we're going to make here is honestly going to look pretty bad until the end here. So just bear with me. It's going to look fine. So we're going to toss on our background here. It's just a little Warzone background. Going to scale this up. Going to want it to right about here should be fine. So first thing we're going to do with this is add a black and white effect onto it. So I'm going to type in black and white in the effects and presets window here. Toss that on there. Looks all right. We could do a lot better. So I'm going to type in curve here. We're going to throw this curves onto it and then just mess with the shadows. So bring that down, and then the highlights, bring that up. Where it's looking like that. We're also going to throw a Gaussian blur on it. Toss that on there. So this is going to be our background. Since it's in the background, we want it to be blurry because we're going to throw a character in here and we're going to want him the main focus. So blur it up right around 22 is good. And then we're also going to toss on the next thing, which is our soldier. So we're going to toss that in there. We're going to put him right about here. We could honestly scale him down a little bit. Actually, I like the size of him. We're going to keep him like that. That's good. And then we want to throw on the same effects except for the blur that we did to the background. So we're going to highlight curve here, hold down shift, highlight black and white, hit Command C on our keyboard, and then paste it by hitting Command V onto this guy. And then we can just mess with the curve. So I'm going to bring up the highlight quite a bit, and then the black or the shadows, we don't want them too black. So right around there should be fine. Next thing we want to do is toss some text on here. So I'm going to go to my text tool, type in Warzone. So Babus New, the font should be fine. We're going to scale this one down, bring it over to the middle. So to perfectly align it in the middle, just go to your align window here. If you don't see any of these windows that we're working with, just go up to window and you'll see, which ones are checked off that allow it to be here. So we want to be in align and go to align horizontally and align vertically. It's going to put it in the middle for us. I'm going to scale it down a little bit. That should be good. I'm going to duplicate this as well because we're going to make some text in the background behind them. So I'm going to drag it behind the soldier. I'm going to change this color to more of a reddish orange like we had before with that other color. So this color code should be good. We're going to scale this up quite a bit. So I'm holding shift as I'm scaling so it scales a little faster. I'm going to hit R on my keyboard to bring up the rotation. We're going to want to rotate it on an angle. Hit V on your keyboard as well so you can just click and drag it. I'm going to scale down a little bit. I think it's a little too large. And then turn the rotation a little bit more like that. Okay, one thing that I'm going to do is change the blend mode to color burn. If you don't see the option to change the blend mode, hit toggle switches / mode here at the bottom, and you should see that pop up where you can change the blend mode right here. So we want to add color burn. It doesn't look perfect yet. Once again, everything at the end will make it look good. So don't worry. A couple more things. One is a grenade. So I'm going to toss that grenade on here. Obviously scale it down. So S on the keyboard, bring up the scaling settings and scale it how we want it. I'm going to hit a little rotation on it as well. Something like that should be fine. Maybe a little bit smaller, just like that. So we also want to put the black and white effect on it. So I'm going to go back to my background here, go to effects control, copy these two effects, Command C, toss it onto our grenade. Mess with the curves a little bit. It was a little too dark, so I'm just bringing the shadows a little bit up. It looks good. Next thing to throw on is dog tags. So here's our dog tag picture. I'm going to bring this to the top right, scale it up quite a bit. These are going to be in our foreground too, by the way. And then since we have the curves and black and white effect already copied, we just hit Command V and it'll paste that. And then I want to mess with the shadow of it, really bring that down. Or the highlight, sorry, bring that down so it's a little bit darker. That looks good. And then we're going to toss a Gaussian blur effect onto this. Just up this a little bit, nothing too crazy. 10 is probably good, so we can copy this and then put it onto our grenade. And then I'm going to up it a little bit for the grenade. Right around 45 should be good. I believe the last thing we are going to throw on this is a fire effect. A couple things. So we have this fire that we're going to toss onto it. I'm going to flip it just by grabbing this and then dragging that to the left so it flips. We can scale it up too and put it right here. I'm also going to drag this all the way to the right so it aligns with our playhead. We're going to change the opacity on this to 45%. That looks good. And then we also have some fire particle effects that we're going to toss on it. So drag this on. I'm going to rotate this first. So it's at like 90 degrees, or we'll go negative 90 here. Scale it down. And then we're just going to change the blend mode of this to add. That looks good. Then we could also turn down the opacity a little bit. 30% is pretty good. So next thing that we have to do is just cut everything to the left. So this is our third scene. So everything right here, we can hit Command-Shift-D. Just delete everything to the left here. We can cut this out too. And then we're going to make this only like 3 seconds as well. So right around 9 seconds, we can bring our playhead to that, highlight everything in our third scene, Command-Shift-D, and then delete. All right, so we have our first scene, second scene, third scene. Now it's time to move on to the final and fourth scene. So drag your playhead to right about here where everything kind of cuts out. So I have this paper kind of texture here. You can look this up on Google and find it, or join our program. Like I've been saying, you'll be able to get the project file and all the assets using this. We're going to scale this up to right about here. We're also going to create a new solid, which is white. So we're going to go to layer, make sure our timeline selected, layer, new, solid. We're going to make this white, hit OK. We're going to hit T on our keyboard and turn down the opacity quite a bit. Around 48% should be good. Next thing we're going to add to it is a little bit of a text writing effect. So we have this here. I'm going to toss this on top, scale this up, bring this to the left. So right about here should be good. We're going to change the blend mode from normal to pin light. Now, if you don't have this particular asset, you just found something on Google, you might have to mess with the blend modes to get the desired look. So just click around with the blend modes and you'll find something that looks good. But for this one, we're going to use pin light. That's just going to kind of take away the background and keep this black font in there. As far as the texturing of this, the last thing we need to add is a little bit of a grunge effect to it. So I'm going to toss on this grunge texture. Just look up grunge, or once again, this will be available in the community along with everything else that comes with the community for you. So toss this on here. You can't really see it because it's white. So since it's white, I'm going to change the blend mode to difference. That's going to bring out the black here. And we're just going to find a good point that makes sense. I kind of like a little bit off to the right here, and then we could scale it up a little bit as well. Actually, we'll keep it the same size. All right, so there's 2 texts that we need to have here. One's a war zone. So I'm going to type in a war zone. We're going to obviously scale this down quite a bit. And then we're going to go to align horizontally, align vertically, and then also change this to like a grayish black. So around that color should be good. Maybe a little bit lighter, to be honest. So light color gray like that would be good. So that's our first text. I'm going to bring my playhead to the right and hit Command-Shift-D. We're going to delete it to the right, and then we're going to hit Command-Shift-D as well, just to delete it in the beginning. So this is going to pop up a war zone, and then for attention is also going to come up. So I'm going to Command-D this to duplicate it. I'm going to drag it to the right, and then we're just going to do for attention. We're going to change attention to this red color, but more of like a lighter red, so something like that. I'm going to scale it down as well. So what happens here, it goes a war zone for attention, and then we want to keep this pretty long. Last thing that we want to throw on top of it is a bunch of circles I found. You could find this online, or you make them in Photoshop, however you want to do it. Once again, for your convenience, this is in our program. So I'm going to just drag this on. So we're going to drag this all on. So when a for attention pops up, that's when we want the circles to come on. So I'm going to take all of them, drag them on to right about here. Make sure they're coming in at the right point. There we go. And then what I'm going to do is, if you don't have this tool, Motion Tools here, I recommend downloading it. It's completely free. This is going to allow us to stagger the layers here by 5 or 10 frames. If you don't have it, you can just do this manually, but all you have to do if you have Motion Tools is type in the amount here. We're going to do 10. That's all you have to do. Make sure these are highlighted, and then hit this icon here, and it's going to stagger it by 10 frames. From here, what I'm going to do is we only want them lasting for 10 frames. So you can see this goes on forever. On this first layer, I'm going to hit Command-Shift-D. That's going to cut it. We're going to delete the thing to the right, go over to our next layer, hit Command-Shift-D, cut it, Same thing with this one, Command Shift D. And then we're going to keep this one long at the end. So now that we have it and it's changing every 10 frames, we need to have it continuously do that. So I'm going to highlight all of these circles here, right click, pre-compose. We could just change this to circles and then click into this, zoom in a little bit. I'm going to drag this top layer to the left so it lines with this so we can cut this at the same 10 frames, drag it back. We also kind of want it overlaying a little bit. So by 1 or 2 frames, so we can drag these by 1 or 2 frames. It gives a nice little like changing effect to it. And then what we can do from here is highlight everything, hit Command D. That's going to duplicate. I'm going to drag this bottom layer up to the top while everything is highlighted. And then now it's just easier for us to like drag over and see what we're working with. Same exact process here. So highlighting everything, Command D, drag this up to the top, drag this to the left, should be good. And then we're going to do it one more time just for good measure. So Command D, drag this all the way to the top and then drag this all the way to the right here. That should be good. So now if we go back, this is forever changing. All right. So then the last thing that we need to do for this scene here is just delete everything here that's overlaying the rest of our scene. So I'm highlighting all of it, Command Shift D, create a cut, and then we can delete all of this to the left. What I also did is just delete the end of this here. So we have a little bit of room to play with here. So just delete the layers at the end. And now we have all of our scenes. So we have this one, goes into this one, goes in that one, and then goes into this one. Now this is where it's going to become, I wouldn't say complicated. You just have to pay attention to detail and what I'm doing here if you're following along. Otherwise you might get lost. So don't skip around in this section because we're going to be animating the 3D scenes and we're going to connect them all together. It can be a little bit confusing if you're not, if you're skipping around. So I recommend watching this section all the way through and following along and doing that. What we're going to do is create a camera. Go to composition, go to layer, new, camera, copy all of these settings here, and then hit OK. We're going to drag this camera all the way to the top. And then from here, what we're going to do is make everything a 3D layer. So highlight all of your layers here. So I just hit Command A to highlight everything. And then we're going to change it to a 3D layer. So if you don't see the option to change it to a 3D layer, you just need to do toggle switches / modes. And then you'll be able to see this area here where we see this 3D icon. And if we just click on one, everything will become a 3D layer since we have everything highlighted. From here, what needs to happen is we need to bring up 2 views. So go to the view over here in the bottom right and do 2 views. So you'll see a second view pop up like this. If it doesn't look like this, all you need to do is just change a few settings. So first thing you should change is, first off, you can see when I click onto this scene here that it's highlighted. So make sure you're clicked onto this scene. And then we're going to go over to this little drop down menu here. If it's not on the right, change it to right. And then it should look like this. If it still doesn't look like this, just go over to this drop down and it should be classic 3D. Then it will look like this. All this really is the right side of our 3D scene here. So you can see if I go over to my sky video layer here, if I drag this back, this is the right side. So it's going back in space. Okay. So we actually want to drag this like really far in the background, pretty much almost as far as it could go. We're going to scale this up quite a bit as well. So it fills up the entire area and even more. Because then we're going to take this and just drag it to where it's like right here. That should be good. The next thing that we're going to manipulate is the cloud. So I'm clicking on this cloud image here, picking the Z layer over here and just bringing it closer to our camera. So the camera is right here. So it's becoming closer. I'm going to mess with the Y and bring it up a little bit. And we want to bring it pretty close. Okay. We're going to do the same exact thing for our next cloud image, except we don't want to make it like the exact same distance. We just want to create our 3D scene a little bit. We want to put some distance in between things here. Oh, one thing as well, we're going to have to bring them down, but we're going to just move them in on the Z space for now. Okay. So just like that, we're building our 3D scene. We're going to keep truth is social media in the middle. So where it's at is completely fine. So for the very beginning, what we want to do is start the camera out really low and bring it onto the frame. So click your camera layer, go to the drop down, go to transform, create a keyframe for all of these settings here. Make sure your playhead is at the very beginning when you do so. Then I'm going to go over to our scene. I'm going to take the Y of our camera. So this is our camera here. I'm just going to drag this all the way down. So right about here, we can see that's where the video's at. That's where we want to drag it. Then we can take our cloud layers and then put them in frame here. Just kind of mess with it, because then this is going to come up, kind of mess where it's at too as well. Okay. So we're at the bottom of our frame. Now I'm going to drag my playhead to the right a little bit, just by 1.5 seconds. And then we want to move our camera up. So there's a cloud that's moving up to our regular frame. So now it's up in our regular frame. One thing that I am going to do is go back to our truth text, and I'm actually going to push this back a little bit because we're going to zoom in on it So we're going to push that back a little bit. And now that it's pushed back, we can go back to our camera. So it's moving up, and then I'm going to drag it to the right a little bit, and we're going to move it in. We might have to mess with the keyframe. So yeah, this is probably way too slow. So I'm going to drag this to the left and then move this in to where it's almost like filling the frame, just like that. Should be good. So if we play this back, goes up real quick. There's truth is social media. I see that at the top, but we're going to fix that later. So one thing we can do is these clouds are pretty like together. So I'm going to just move this cloud way up on frame so that the camera passes it. I'm going to move some closer as well. I think that's our problem. Not close enough here. There we go. Okay, that's looking good. One thing we have to do to the truth is text here is rotate it a little bit. So I'm going to hit R on my keyboard. It's going to bring up our rotation settings. I'm going to go to the beginning here and just do all these rotations and just change them a little bit. Can't really see what's going on, but when it comes in the frame, we'll be able to see it. So it's pretty off axis here now that's in the frame. What we can do is just kind of reset some of this a little bit so it looks a little bit more natural. And there we go. I'm going to take these keyframes and drag it to the end. All right. So it's a lot of just like finicking with the positioning of stuff as you go about this, but I think it's pretty good for now. And then this thing's supposed to pop in. So before we do that, I'm going to highlight these keyframes. Or actually, if you have this plugin, I highly recommend it. It's called Flow. It's just an easy way to manipulate the speed of the keyframes. Definitely recommend it. I think it's free. If not, definitely buy it if it's not free. But yeah, so what I have here is a thing called Sauce. Shout out to Mapal. He created this. It's just taking the graph and making it look like this and hitting apply. And that's just going to make things a whole lot smoother. Okay. And I realize it still doesn't look good. I know as we're animating, it still doesn't look that good. Trust me, it will. We just got to get to the end because the effects that make it look good really eat up your computer speed. And I have a pretty good computer. So if they're eating up my computer speed, they're most likely going to eat up your computer speed and the playback speed. So we got to wait till the end to add the finishing touches that actually make this look legit and good. But we're just going through the animation process as of right now. So we have that. The next step within this, I'm actually going to, let me see how the timing of everything is. I'm actually going to drag this in a little bit more. All right, so now that's dragged in a little bit more. What we want to do here is drag our playhead pretty much to the end here. And I'm going to take the camera that we have. I'm going to go up to pan under cursor tool. So make sure my camera layer is selected as I have this tool here. And I'm going to drag it to the right here. Okay, so it goes in and then it goes right. What we can do as well, I'm just going to snap to those keyframes we made. We could just zoom in a little bit. It doesn't have to be anything crazy, just a small zoom in will help it. So as it drags to the right here, this is where we want the next scene to pop up. So the first thing that we actually want is the man. So I'm going to take this and drag that to the left to kind of have him in here. So I don't know exactly where he's at. We're obviously not seeing him on the screen here to the left. So also I'm holding space as I'm grabbing around here. So you can see when I click on the layer, he's in the middle here. So we need to scale him down and then move him in the right. So grab the X axis here and move him in the right place. Scale him down a little bit and then mess with this X axis. So we also want to do that little shape layer as well because that's supposed to be behind him. So we're going to just take this, move it way back to match his layer here. We could put it a little bit behind him and then take the X here and drag it so it's right behind that phone. Okay. And then this text here, what we're going to do is hit T on our keyboard. That's going to bring up the opacity. So as it's moving to the right here, so right about here, that's when we want this to pretty much fade out. So I'm going to hit T on my keyboard to bring up opacity, create a keyframe for that, drag my playhead to the right, and then make that 0. And that's going to fade out that text. So I almost want him appearing a little bit earlier. So right about here should be good. We're going to take this and drag that to the left, these 2 frames. So he comes in and appears there. So he appears a little abruptly. Obviously, we don't want that. So make sure both these layers are selected. I'm going to hit T on my keyboard. We're going to hit opacity, drag that to the right, and then make this 0. So yeah, that should be good. We can have him come in a little bit quicker. And then one thing that we need here is a black background. So I'm going to go to layer, new, solid. We're going to go to color, make this a black background, hit OK. We're going to drag this all the way down behind everything in scene 3. So right about here, we can cut it. So hit Command-Shift-D, delete the thing to the left. This black background is probably going to have to come in with him as well. Don't want to come in at the same time. So right there, and then the background comes in. Also, let's delete it on the end here too. So Command-Shift-D. Okay. So one thing I'm noticing is that the placement of these 2 guys, they need to be, once the camera, this last keyframe in the camera here is done, they need to be in the center here. So right about there. Okay. All right. So let's go over to that black background that we just made, and we want to make this a 3D layer. And this doesn't have to be a 3D layer. Make sure it's not. Otherwise it'll kind of complicate things. But hit T on your keyboard, create a keyframe for opacity, drag that to the right, and then make the 0 in the beginning. So there we go. Next thing is finding the text here. That's going to come up. I'm going to drag it to the left a little bit. So once the guy is done coming in, that's when we want the text to come up. So I'm clicking it, and obviously we don't see it here. So we need to find the right positioning of it for the frame. So I'm dragging it back to Z axis. And then we can see here, if we go over to the X axis, the red arrow, we can drag it in frame here. Okay. So that also appears really quick. What we want to do is hit T on our keyboard, bring our playhead to the beginning, create a keyframe for opacity, drag these two out to the right, make them 0 in the beginning. And then one thing too is we want become to animate. So we're just going to focus on this text of become. All we need to do here is do this drop down, and you'll see this little thing where it says animate. We're going to click on that. We're going to go to position, and we're going to do one more. We see position, and we're going to do opacity. Now that we have that, it's called an animator. We're going to change the name of this. So we're going to do rename. We're going to do it position 1, and then we're going to duplicate it. To duplicate it, hit Command D on a Mac, should be Control D on a PC. We can do the drop down on this as well. But for the position, what we want to do for the first one, so we're on position 1, we're going to bring this down by like 40. 45 should be good. And then we're going to change the opacity of it to 0. Nothing really changes with it when I bring that opacity down to 0. That's totally fine. What we're going to now do is go over to position 2, and we're going to change this position to -45. So that's going to put it back to its normal spot, and then keep the opacity as 100. So now that we have this, we're going to drop down the range selector on position 2, and we're going to do the offset by -100. You can see that the text disappears. So -100. We're going to drag our playhead to the beginning of the text. You can't really see it for now because we messed with the opacity of it. But yeah, now that's at the beginning. We're going to create a keyframe for that. Drag our playhead to the right, and then change the offset to where it comes in. So it should be right around 0 here. So there's our little animation. You can't really see it because so it seems like the first keyframe here got a little messed up. So we want to do -100, I think. And then the next keyframe should be 0, and it comes in well. We're going to fix the position of it later. But yeah, so it's coming in. A couple things that we need to add to it. So we're going on to advanced in the position 2. We're going to change this to characters is fine, but we're going to change the shape to ramp down. We're going to change the ease high percentage up quite a bit. So we play that back, comes in a lot more smoothly. You'll notice though that the last word here, or the last letter, doesn't come in all the way. So what we need to do is go back to our offset keyframe and just change this to a little bit more, so it's all the way in there. So 100%. So it goes from -100 to 100%. So that's how that comes in. What we can do is drag this to the right, because I want to come in a little bit later, to be honest. And then we can take the positioning of the become and is gonna, and just change the X position of that. So right where this ends is where this should be. So we play this back. Let me kind of zoom out here. Okay, this is looking pretty good. Gonna go back over to my 2 views just to see where the Instagram logos are at. So here's our one. We're just gonna bring this back and in. We want it behind him, so we're gonna bring it back in Z space. This is him right here. So we bring it behind him. Should look pretty good. We also want to make sure our playhead is at right where the camera stopped. So that's giving us a clear indication of when this should come in, or where it should be. So right here should be good. I'm actually going to drag it a little bit more to the left, just like that. We're going to want this to fade in as well. So I'm hitting T on my keyboard. We can create a keyframe for opacity, drag my playhead to the beginning of it, and bring that to 0. Okay. And now we want to find the last Instagram logo. We're going to bring this in frame, bring this to the right here. We also want that to fade in. So also I want to just kind of drag it up over so it's overlapping our first scene. Hit T on the keyboard, drag that out to the right, and make that 0 in the beginning. And there we go. So become seems a little bit too quick as far as like the animation on it. So I'm going to click on the layer and hit U. That's going to bring up the keyframes that we made for it. I'm going to drag the offset keyframes to the right, and it'll come up a little bit slower. All right, so this is what we have so far. I know it's not looking completely right yet, but it's getting there. So we have this is going to become. We want this to have enough time for people to read it, obviously. So is going to become. That's a little tip for you. If you read it twice, that means it's enough time for your viewer to read it once. Just because we already know what the text is, we can read it a lot quicker. So that's why you read it twice, to figure out how long this should be up. So right here, I'm going to kind of delete everything. So Command-Shift-D, delete. And that's our second scene. Now we need to bring in the third scene. The third scene is actually pretty easy to bring in. It's more of a transition that's going to happen, and we're going to make that transition happen at the end. But as we can see here, with the camera that we have, everything's super zoomed in. So I'm going to cut this camera. So I'm going to hit Command-Shift-D. It's going to make a cut. I'm going to hit U on my keyboard. That's going to bring up all the keyframes. I'm going to delete every keyframe here. And then I'm also going to hit Reset. So if we go over to here, bring down the transform, you'll see Reset. That's going to reset everything. So now it's just like a simple transition to that. We're going to add an overlay that makes it look good, but that doesn't come until the end. So now that we have this new camera, essentially, new camera layer, we need to mess with the 3D scene here. So I'm going to go to the beginning, and obviously the background, so this is our background, the Warzone background. We're going to want this in the background. So I'm going to hit on the left side here, on our right camera view angle. I'm going to drag this all the way to the back here. The farther the better. That means the more space you're creating, the farther you drag it out, which gives it more of that 3D effect to it. I'm going to hit S on my keyboard to scale it up, just so it fills up the frame. That's good. We can honestly move the positioning of it as well if we want. That's good. Next thing is the Warzone text. We're going to make that kind of like an in-betweener type thing. I'm going to scale it up. So whatever we want in the middle, or whatever we want in focus, should be in the middle of our frame, which is the text Warzone and our character here. So we're not going to move them, but we want this text in between them. That's going to create that 3D effect to it, where it's in between the background and our character. Because when you zoom in, things are going to scale up at a different rate. That's the beautiful thing about these 3D scenes. All right, so the next thing is a soldier, so we want him in the middle. Warzone, text, we want him in the middle, so don't need to mess with those two things. Grenade, we want the grenade really close to the camera, so I'm bringing it on the Z here. We can't see it in frame, so we're going to have to drag it and then scale it down as well. So right there is good. Same thing with the dog tags. We're going to drag this pretty much to the same spot. Drag it on frame, then scale it down. That's good. So those are in the foreground. All right. And then we also have the fire. We can drag this. We don't want it necessarily as close as our grenade and everything, but we want it closer to the camera. So I'm doing like an in-betweener type thing and just messing with the position. That should be good. All right. So now that we have the 3D scene built out, now we need to animate this 3D scene with the camera. So I'm going to highlight all these keyframes, and then we're going to do a little bit of a zoom in here. So I'm going to drag my playhead to the right by a little bit. Go over to my dolly towards camera tool in the top left. Make sure my camera 2 layer here is selected. And we're going to just zoom this in. Okay. We can mess with the positioning of it a little bit. I'm just doing the pan under cursor tool. I'm going to also change the scale of Warzone down to right there. So you can see that our 3D scene's looking pretty decent. We obviously want it to scale in a little quicker, so I'm going to drag these 2 keyframes, bring it closer to our beginning ones. What we can do too is highlight these 4 keyframes here, right click, keyframe assistant, easy ease. Then we're going to go over to our graph editor, click on this, and drag that to the left. I think that's the right one. Then we can space these out a little bit more. So it's just ramping in really quick. I don't think it's the right ones. All right, so it's not the orange ones that we did. I think we want to do the purple one here and drag that to the left. Yeah, much better. And then we can drag these a little bit more to the right. Now we're just going to see the timing of everything. The timing is really important. You know, make sure your viewers can read everything. So I even think this is a little too long. So we can make a cut here. And then we can drag this all over to the left, and then make sure this camera is cut. This camera is dragged to the left as well. Okay. It's going to become a Warzone, and then right around here, like in the middle of it, so right around like 2 seconds in, Warzone, right here. We're going to we don't have to make a cut yet. What we can do is actually drag our final scene over, and this is where we want it to appear. So what I'm actually going to do is just bring it to the right. So there's some things that we want to appear first, and things that come a little bit later. So the background obviously needs to come in along with that white layer. This can come in as well. I'm going to do, for the white layer in the background, I'm going to hit T on my keyboard, create keyframe for opacity, move that to the right, make it 0 in the beginning. And then for our type text here, I'm going to do the same thing where the opacity is 100 and then 0 in the beginning. I'm going to have this come in a little bit later. So what we're going to do here as well, when it comes to Warzone here, right about here, it needs to start zooming out a little bit. So I'm going to take my cursor, bring it to the right, and have it zoom out. So I'm going to go over to the dolly tool and zoom it out quite a bit. I know there's a lot of things that are still there. We'll get rid of that. Okay. We're going to have to mess with the timing of it. So right around here is when we want all of this stuff to kind of come in. And then, of course, the grenade. So the grenade and everything can delete. So we're going to do dog tag. We can delete that here. The grenade, the fire particles can be deleted. Right about here, grenade can be deleted. Okay, this is looking good. One thing we want to do is the type text. We want to make this a little bit more 3D as well. So I'm going to hit V on my keyboard, go to the Z, and really like scale this type text closer to the camera. Hit S on my keyboard. We can scale it down and then just make sure we're dragging it in frame here. And then the grunge as well needs to come up. So we're going to do that as the font or the text texture comes up. So I'm going to hit T on my keyboard, make keyframe for opacity, drag that to the right, make it 0 in the beginning. And then for this, we want to kind of make this like a middle thing, put it in the middle between the text and the background here. Okay, so we see Warzone, a Warzone, and then we need this to cut out, a Warzone, and we're going to have it cut out right here. Command D, delete that, drag these two over for attention. So we need to drag these forward. No, that's fine actually. A Warzone for attention. And what we can do is keep it scaling out here. So I'm going to bring my cursor over to the right, go over the dolly tool, drag this out. We're just going to have to scale up the white text or the white thing here. So I'm going to hit S on my keyboard, scale this up so it just fills the frame. All right, so that's the end of this scene here, and we actually have all of our scenes here, and everything's pretty good. Obviously, it's not looking exactly how we want it to look yet. There's a couple of little animations that we need to add, and then the finishing touches. So one thing, though, is at the beginning is a little too quick with reading this. For tutorial purposes, I'm not going to mess with the timing of it, as I'll take a little bit longer. But on your side, if you want to mess with the timing, you certainly can. It's all right. One animation that we have to add to this is actually social media popping up. So we want social media to pop up right here. I'm going to click into our composition here where we have the truth is social media text. So we're going to go over to social media. I'm going to hit Command D on my keyboard to create a cut. We want social to pop in first and then media. So I'm going to go social media, and then we can have a little fade effect on it. So I'm going to bring my playhead to the beginning here, hit T on my keyboard, create keyframe for opacity, drag that to the right, make it 0 in the beginning. Same exact thing for media. Hit T on my keyboard, keyframe for opacity, drag the playhead drag the keyframe to the right, and make this 0 in the beginning. Social media. We can make this actually a little quicker. There we go. So we go back to our comp. This should be appearing in, hopefully at the right time. It could actually appear in right here. So we're gonna take these and do that. There we go. Truth is, social media is gonna become Warzone, a Warzone for attention. This is looking good. All right, so now we're gonna add our glow effect to everything. This is pretty easy. We just need to do one glow effect and then kind of copy and paste it. So we wanna do it on the truth text first. So I'm gonna, in the effects and preset, I'm gonna look up glow. If you don't have deep glow, once again, I recommend you should definitely get it, as it'll help you. This is the thing that all the top creators are using. I think it's like 40 or 50 bucks. Definitely get it. If not, you can use the regular After Effects glow. It's just going to take you a little bit longer to, put the inputs to get the desired glow effect that we really want. So I'm going to use deep glow. I'm going to toss that onto our truth text. So now it's on. Obviously, it doesn't look good. So we're going to have to adjust the radius and exposure to some things. Actually, turn the radius up. Just adjust the exposure. That looks good. So that setting looks good. I'm going to copy this, Command C, and we're going to toss this on a bunch of things. So the text is gonna need to have it. That's kind of funny. Is gonna need to have it. So we're going to toss that on there. I'm going to up the exposure quite a bit on it. Command C that, and we're going to toss that onto the become text. We can also toss it onto the Instagram logo here. We're going to need to turn down the radius quite a bit. I'm going to go back to one view. If we don't turn down the radius, it's going to have this like hard line on it. We just need something very, very small. That should be good. We can copy this deep glow and toss it onto the other Instagram logo. Warzone needs to have it. So we're going to do Warzone in the back. We're going to need to up the radius quite a bit. up the exposure. Actually, I'm just going to toss on the regular deep glow just so we get the base settings of it. We can turn down the radius on it. Okay. And then we can copy this one, toss it onto the second Warzone text. Obviously, the exposure needs to go down quite a bit on it. I think if we toss it on the fire as well, we'll see how that looks. Be fire if we toss it on there. They're saying, so just mess around with the settings. You'll get a desired look that you'd want. What else do we need to toss it on? Maybe we toss on to this final text here. Yeah, I think that looks cool if we actually do this. For attention. Cool. One final thing that I think would be cool with all of this right here is actually going into the rotation settings. So I'm highlighting all the layers in our last frame here. I hit R on my keyboard. I'm going to mess with the rotation of it. So I think like having a little bit more of a, actually no, hold on. Okay. One thing for the final scene here is the background stuff. So like the texture in the background, the handwritten texture, and the grunge stuff. I'm going to add a little bit of a rotation to it. So I'm highlighting all those layers. I'm going to hit R on my keyboard. Then we're going to add a X rotation. This is just going to give it a little bit of more of a 3D feel to it, and then a Z rotation as well. So we're seeing this guy here. Obviously, we don't want him when it comes in. So as it comes in here, what we can do is have him fade out. So I'm going to hit T on my keyboard. So it's coming in right here. Create a keyframe for opacity, drag my playhead to the right, make it 0. And then the Warzone text can be, if we go over to our 2 views, you just need to drag that. Maybe we'll hit a little rotation on it as well. So our Warzone text, we need to bring it up a little bit. So it's in frame, probably for this. No, we're good. Things could be scaled up obviously too. So all of our background layers can scale up just a little bit. Hit S on the keyboard, scale those up. Okay, it's okay if a little bit shown because we're gonna fix that at the end here. But now if we play it back, we can see how things are looking. Looks a little bit better with the glow. All right, so some more finishing touches that we have to add to everything. One is just highlighting all the layers except the camera, and we're going to add a motion blur to everything. Now, this is really going to slow down your computer, but it's going to give us the desired effects that we're looking for. It's going to just clean things up and make it a little bit more natural. All right, so this is what it's looking like so far. Still not where we want it to be, I promise you. The last couple things that we're going to add to it is really going to make it a lot better. So it's good though. It's really good. This obviously is like way too still. So yeah, there's some things that we need to fix with it. So we have all the layers highlighted here. We actually want to highlight the camera layers as well. So highlight all of them. We're going to right click and we're going to pre-compose this. We can call this 3D comp. So that's our 3D comp. Now we're going to add some things to it. So first is a new camera. We can go new camera. Copy these settings here, hit OK. What we want to do with this camera is just go to the rotation settings. So we just hit R on your keyboard to bring up rotation. You'll see orientation here. We're going to hold down Option on a Mac. It might be Control on a PC. And we're going to click a keyframe for orientation. That's going to bring up our expressions. Now it's a pretty simple expression that we're going to do. We're just going to type in wiggle, parenthesis, 3, and then comma, 0.2. So 3 is the speed, and then 0.2, that number. The second number is the amount of like distance it's moving or wiggling at. So make sure that the 3D comp layer is 3D, otherwise this wiggle effect won't appear there. We're going to keep it like that because we're going to put a little bit of a border on it that protects these black areas that are happening here. So one thing that we're going to add here is a light leak. So I'm going to go over to my project here and find these light leaks. I'm going to toss this light leak on here. So I want it happening right about here, right when that transition is happening. So right here, we just want to find a good point within this light leak for it to be in there. And then we're going to rotate it, obviously. Bring it in the right area here, scale it up. And then I'm going to change this. So we're going to do toggle switches. I'm going to change the blend mode to difference. So right when that comes in, it's going to go like this. Maybe it's a little too soon, in my opinion. So it could happen right about here. And then right here, we can delete it. Command D. That looks good. We need to add a light leak to the beginning as well. So I'm going to just take this comp, drag it to the right, and then I have this red light leak. Once again, you can have this for free. Once again, you can get this if you're in our programming community. So I'm going to rotate it. can scale it up a little bit. Just find a good point within the light leak. So right about here, cut the beginning, cut it right here, drag it all the way to the beginning here. We can change the blend mode to add. All right, so those are our light leaks. The next thing we're going to toss onto it is this Super 8 kind of frame here. So I'm going to rotate this. I'm going to scale it up right about here, and then we can drag it down. Let's see here. Then I'm just going to change the blend mode to multiply. If you're using a different frame, you might have to change the blend mode to something else, but just play around. Now that's at multiply. It looks pretty good. All right, that's pretty much it. That's our final video here. It looks pretty good. If you want to get the project files and assets to this, make sure to be a part of the community. We're currently running a discount on the community, and it's only going to be for 5 days. Otherwise, we are going to increase the price and limit the amount of people who can join. We want to keep this exclusive, and we want to make sure that everyone who joins has that attention that is needed. So right now in the community, you get the program that teaches you the Ali Abdaal, Iman Ghazi, Vox, Danko, even my style that's gotten me millions of views, as well as it teaches you from being an okay average editor that struggles to land clients and get paid what you deserve to an advanced editor and animator where you can attract top influencers and brands, just like I have done myself, where I've earned up to $30,000 a month. This program and community teaches you how to do just that. So click the link in the description to join. The discount is only going to be for 5 days. After that, seats will be very limited and the price will increase. With that, I'll see you in the next video. Peace.